Hello, hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining. Today we have our guest lecture from Mr. S. Chandra. Subhash sir, I call him and call him with a lot of respect. We have been knowing each other from last 3 years, and most importantly, he has been my mentor, guide at every level, and a father figure for me. All I can tell. Apart from this, obviously his background and everything I have shared with you all people. Okay, so guys, and I'll take probably the first 2 3 minutes to introduce about sir and also to tell you about how this session is going to progress, what all being covered, and by that time I think more audience will join. Meanwhile, I'll just take name of few users who have joined. So Abhishek, thank you. Pawan, Naman, Abhishek Gupta. Hello, Abhishek. So two, three Abhishek have joined, and then we have Amar Thapa. Hello, Amar. Pandurang. So guys, yeah. So 122 people have joined. Generally, we have seen 200 plus people coming to these sessions. So by the time I'll hand over to sir, I'll wait for probably 1 2 minute more, and then obviously the session is from sir. So let me give you a brief background. So sir is right now associated with the Bank of Baroda, and in Bank of Baroda group itself, he was a key person in developing corporate banking course there for its employees. And he has been a trainer, internal trainer for Bank of Baroda. And since a lot of you wanted to understand about the PSU banks and banking industry, it immediately struck in my mind that I'll bring sir, and I requested him, and he happily agreed to share his experience, answer your questions. And the best thing is, he's not going to give only one guest lecture. You all know that India is a service sector driven economy. 40% plus contribution is coming from sectors like service sectors. Banking is one of them. Even if you see the Nifty 50 or Sensex 30 composition, you see a good weightage is there from banking and financial services. So it was but natural from all of you to ask for this kind of session from banking sector, and we have Mr. Subhas who is going to present this. Apart from this, that today he is just going to share his thought and about the history of banking. Let me tell you something, that it is going to be not one lecture but at least 7 to 8 more lectures in coming days. Sir has promised up to 10, he thinks that in 10 lectures everything can be covered. So guys, I'll hand over it to sir. I seriously I don't feel like speaking today. I know you have been listening to me in my lectures and in other live sessions, but it is the day when I want to be a student. I want to learn a lot, and without wasting a minute more, I would like to ask sir. I'll be handling his presentation. So presentation he has shared with me. So I'll open the presentation, sir. But before that, before the presentation, if you want to, it's all yours. So 200 plus students are waiting for your lectures.
Thank you, Pawan, and thank you for giving this platform as well. Teaching, training, learning and development has been a passion for me, though I've been a banker for 35 years. This is my 36th year running in banking industry. And before that, I also had a brief stint with Indian Air Force as a combat training pilot. So coming to banking, before we start, I would like to put my first slide at why banking class. Why do we really need this class on banking? I know that the group here is for investment sessions, learning on investment tricks, and the tricks of the trade that goes with investment strategy. But learning about banking is more because of two great reasons. One is that no economic activity, I repeat, no economic activity is as impactful as banking on society. And banking is the socio-economic mirror of the society that gets reflected. So I thought that I must start this session or series of sessions with history of Indian banking. Well, world banking was also a choice, but I thought that since we are living here, we are investing here, we try to understand this sector in the country itself. Therefore, Indian banking history would be very important for all of us. So the first slide that shows that, Kunal, can I have the first slide, please? The first slide shows I have borrowed it from sociology and psychology, this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This basically is taught in sociology and psychology and talks about human behavior and why you do something why you do it, how are you motivated to do it. How and why have I borrowed this slide? I'll tell you. All three economic stratifications of the society, the upper class, the middle class, and the lower class, they all get equally impacted by banking. This is my first reason to bring this slide or this concept in this class or in this session. And how Maslow is relevant here and how banking squeezes into this theory, because this theory talks about physiological needs for human beings, safety needs, then one notch above when the human being moves forward to safety needs. When he goes further, develops further, earns more money, then he goes for love and belongingness. And likewise, you see the ladder that you keep going, then you look for social needs or esteem needs, and then self-actualization. So these are the steps which usually, and the Maslow theory was it started in 40s, developed through 50s, and it became very popular, and it was a concept of interest for researchers, for demographers, for policy planners, for society at large. So you'll see that even at physiological stage, banking is equally important today, which you'll see how direct benefit transfer, DBT they call it, how the DBT transfers take place on physiological level for the poorest of the poor, for people who are at the lowest rung of economic ladder and they are struggling to make their two ends meet. They also need banking because if they don't have an account, the government benefits, the dole-outs, the subsidies, the subventions that governments give for various activities that cannot be transferred. So you'll find that even at physiological level and even at hunger level, if you see the current corona crisis, 101,70,000 crores were distributed among the poorest of the poor. And it happened through DBT. And it could happen possibly in such a short time only because there was a banking system as an intermediary that it could happen. So you see that at physiological level this happens. At safety level, the next level that we talk about, then what comes to your mind is savings. Moment you are able to save a little from your daily activity, daily life, daily economic activity, then you try to save it. Earlier, people used to keep it under wraps, under their house somewhere which was not so safe. Somewhere used to be flooded. Sometimes the rodents used to destroy it. So now people have realized that banking is required even at this stage of economic strata. and also at middle class and for upper class, where you need your wealth to be stored securely, and they need it in liquid terms, that when they need it, they get it back without any hassles. So savings again is linked to safety needs. So why this arrow is, I have kept it at a lower level, because banking per se has a lot to do at physiological and safety levels. But at the same time, I do not say that it doesn't operate at higher levels, say esteem needs. Why this? Because economic ladder climbing, wealth creation, by way of either doing agriculture or running a business or doing serving in an organization, whatever you do, you need banking to climb up your ladder through loans, through leverages, that you are able to create more and more wealth. So even at esteem needs, you need banking. Banking as an ecosystem tries to help you in realizing your dreams. Second, and not very unimportant, I would say, is tag of being bankable. The very tag that I am bankable is a great feeling, that if I'm bankable, I can flaunt it to my peer group, to my family, to my friends, that look, when I need money, I get loans. That means people trust me, people believe in me. So this again helps you a great deal. Likewise, it's also aspirational in nature. Like you try to go for a product which is a high value branded product, and you try to flaunt it when you as your cherished possession. Likewise, if you associate with a good bank and you get good facilities, that again becomes aspirational in nature. So banking has been, enmeshed with your social life, your economic life, and all activities that you do. So I thought that banking I'll take, and banking too, I'll start with history of banking. Why history of banking? Because you realize that if you try to, as an investor, you try to understand a sector, if you try to understand a sector where you really want to put your money in, you would like to know its history. That helps you and make you more confident of your knowledge. You have known a sector through readings, but you haven't known its history. Probably you are incomplete with your knowledge. But with this knowledge, you are able to do well in this particular sector. So this is how and why I thought that the slide I must share with you. So I would start the history part, and I'll take you to the pre-independence era of banking. Now, this pre-independence era of banking is important because one information that I would like to share with you, that India has been one of the contributors to banking system to the world. It all started around 2000 BC. It's almost like Stone Age that first prototype banks started. And it started by merchants who were giving grain loans to farmers, traders, and all those people involved in economic activity. So it became something that it gave the idea of some instrument that can store value, and therefore there were three different regions of the globe that were actually practicing this banking. Assyria was one, India was another, and Sumeria was third. These three regions on the globe were practicing this system. So that gave the birth to banking system. Further, as the system grew, the currency part, the concept of currency part came into being. And once the currency part came into being, so people learned about store of value. Store of value is something that one really needs to understand that why store of value is required. The store of value gives you a concept that the currency has three functions. One is that it's a medium of exchange that people
Uh,
can.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. So when you have to change the slide, you can tell me. I'll press the button.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, okay. Thanks, Kundan. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
right now we are
I'm
showing
pre-independence. I'm now at pre-independence.
pre-independence. So next time you will say that, Kundan, go to the next slide.
Okay, okay,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you, sir. Sorry to interrupt. Here we
So
are.
with pre-independence.
Pre-indep-
Yeah. No, pre-independence. Prior to prior.
Okay, sir. One second. Why banking? History of Indian banking. History of
Yeah, yeah,
Indian.
yeah. Pre-independence. No, this is post. One slide prior to this. Prior, before
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Pre-independence era.
So, so what actually currency started with this practice, banking practice, around that time. Then they learned about the store of value and the coins and the coins of different metals and rocks and then leather and the wood, the many forms of store of value started, and it basically served three functions. Of one was medium of exchange that the currency could provide. The other was unit of account. That means it could account itself that what a currency can do. So 100 or 150, so that unit account was possible. And third was store of value. So these three functions started with the currency, and then the banking system started uh, doing well. Modern banking system that India had was little before the Britishers really came into it. That was Bank of Hindustan, that was formed in 1770, and it ceased to operate about 60, 70 years later. And then Britishers came in, and Britishers were traders, so they came with idea of banks because Britain had banks those times. So they came and formed Bank of Bengal. They formed it in 1806, and Bank of Bombay was formed in 1840, and Bank of Madras. These three banks were called presidency banks, and they were subsequently merged. Not all of them did very well because Bank of Bombay had to be closed down when the cotton crisis was very critical, sometimes around 1860s or 70s, and then restarted later. Ultimately, these presidency banks were merged into Imperial Bank of India. That became merging happened in 1921. So 1921, it became Imperial Bank of India. And some of the Indian banks that started working was Allahabad Bank in 1865. Subsequently, more banks came up, PNB and Bank of India and Bank of Baroda. They all were formed between 1895 to 1910 or 12 or something, 1913. So likewise, these developments kept happening. RBI was formed in 1935, the central bank, country's central bank that got formed in 1935. And lot of development started happening on this side globally, including India. Like the currency, sorry, the instruments that we transact with, we still transact with are through checks and drafts and bills of exchange, promissory notes. So these were governed through negotiable instruments. These are called negotiable instruments, and an act was promulgated in 1881. It's called NI Act 1881. That still is operational today, of course, with lot of modifications and lot of amendments. But these remain, what do you call, operational even today. We can go to the next slide. That is when the independence had to come. So this is what happens. This is what happened around independence. At the time of independence, India primarily had a banking system that was urban in nature. It was all urban. So people used to bank in urban areas, but rural areas remained with money lenders, and most of us must have seen what a money lender can do to its people, but entire rural population remained under money lenders around that time. And we have only known these money lenders through films, how tyrannical they were, how exploitative they were, and how they used to unleash terror on rural folks and exploited them in their times of need. So this is a horror story for the Indian rural side till independence. But as we embarked upon the development plan post independence, then things started improving, but it was slow. The one milestone that I can share with you, which is again a very important milestone, is of 1949 when Banking Regulation Act was formulated. Now, this Banking Regulation Act acted as a watchdog for entire banking system, which was in private hands. Entire banking system around that time remained with private. And when the plan period, the government's plan, 5-year plan started with the commanding heights of economy, if you have heard this expression, which have been taken from the first 5-year plan concepts, when Pandit Nehru, our first Prime Minister, was greatly enamored by the Soviet Union pioneer model of state-sponsored growth. So we took a socialist path of development and we started working on it. A lot of PSUs started getting formed as we moved forward from 1951 onwards. So we started getting a lot of public sector units. They started getting formed. Now, once they were getting formed, so their memorandum and article of association required a bank account to be, written in their memorandum. So the need was felt that a government bank should, because it was a state-sponsored plan of development, so its government bank should be there. So that is how 1955 we had Imperial Bank of India. You remember that presidency banks of East India Company, those three banks. So that Imperial Bank of India got nationalized in 1955 and were called State Bank of India. So State Bank of India became the first nationalized bank in 1955. By then the first 5-year plan was getting over. So there was a huge rush by all these corporate bodies and the PSUs to open account in the government account, in the government-owned bank. And that is how the legacy remains with State Bank with a seal of government, real government bank. That legacy and tag, SBI uses to its advantage even today, though there are many other nationalized banks. But SBI got the benefit of it, and it reached the benefit till now. So, if you really have a question that why SBI is so big or why SBI has so much of deposits and advances or why SBI is favored by the government, the answer is it's more history than anything else. Because all other banks are equally government as SBI, but historically it got nationalized in 55, other banks got nationalized later, and therefore the legacy remains with SBI and the inertia and the resistance to change. So the government account, the PSU bank, organization accounts all remain with SBI. So that is the story about SBI. So what happened during this period that government have realized that the private banks cannot really deliver the planned objectives as formulated under 5-year plans, and therefore they had started working on it. The Banking Regulation Act was already in place, so more and more plans were on that how to cater to the banking needs of the people, the poor and the rural population. So I will jump forward looking to the time set by Kundan to me, I'll jump past to pre-nationalization era. So as I said that Imperial Bank was nationalized, large number of banks had failed during those times, and to tell you the correct figure, 1,565 banks had failed between independence and pre-nationalization. So this figure should give you an idea that how easy it is to see a bank failure. So banks do fail, it's a reality. But let me tell you one more thing. This was not something very specific to Indian context. Bank failures were happening globally. Around between World War I and World War II, 1,000 plus banks failed in US. So this was a global phenomenon happening worldwide. But then in Indian context, it was much more because it was in private hands, number one. Number two, it was very fragmented and not really helping each other. There was no cohesiveness. There was lack of regulation, even though RBI was formed in 35, but there was a lack of regulation. All these led to a very weak banking structure. So failure was very fragile system. So failure used to happen very often, and that actually also happened because of the greedy owners. They were not really ready to forego their own earnings or their assets, and bank had to pay for it, and the depositors had to lose out. So development, whereas on one side, development was taking place or taking pace at a greater pace under the plan periods. One bank was not sufficient to cater to the entire country's banking system, and the private banks were either failing or not living up to the expectations for various reasons. So there was a conscious decision that government had taken as early as 1948. 1948, All India Congress Committee had taken a decision to nationalize large private banks and put under state control so that they could also deliver on the lines of as state banks started doing from 1955. So, 'we'll go to the next slide. So this is how a watershed, I'd say it is a watershed between the banking sector period for pre-nationalization, that then the year was 1969. 1969, 19th of July, 14 banks were nationalized. And many of the experts have commented that not even reforms of 1991, which is supposed to be a landmark decision in the development of the country, when we decided to open up, of course, under a great pressure because of other economic crises that we faced during those times. But then, even that pales into insignificance, that decision of Dr. Manmohan Singh's time, that nationalization remains the one of the biggest decision of banking sector and financial sector in the government's history. And somebody has commented that not even reforms of 1991 are comparable in their consequences, whether political, social, economic, and whatever. And with this nationalization, over 80% of banking assets with SBI put together that were brought under state's control. So it was a huge landmark that Mrs. Gandhi created for the country. And the dividends it paid off to the country, we can see as we go forward. So with these 14 banks and with State Bank, there were 15. And the reasons were far too many. As we said that the private sector banks were not able to deliver, they're not able to perform in a very cohesive way for national development. They're not able to cater to the requirements of the entire population. So the government had no choice but to nationalize. Now, this nationalization era, if you see from 69 to 91, I have divided this between 91, that is post-reforms era. So this era has actually given a lot of strength to the country in terms of economic, in terms of reach. Bankings are at par, if not better than post offices. Otherwise, people used to call post office as the place, is the institution that was everywhere in the country. But banking had penetrated farther, even more interior than post offices. This was done through policy measures, incentives, and hardcore decisions from the government. I still remember my 80s when the licensing policy of Reserve Bank used to say that if you open 4 rural branches, we will give you 1 urban branch license. This was a policy. So this gave so much of leeway to the banking sector to open branches in rural areas because everyone wanted to have an urban license. The entire economic activity was concentrated in urban areas. Therefore, profit-making business and profit-making customers were located in urban areas. So everyone wanted to be in urban area. The bankers who were posted also wanted to live in urban areas for better lifestyle. So the whole pressure on banking system was to open branches in urban areas. But the licensing policy said you open 4 rural branches to get 1 urban license. And this is how the penetration took place. It was a great moment. And cut back to 80s, maybe mid 80s. Then there was a service area approach that was propagated by the then Deputy Governor, Dr. P.D. Ojha, who came up with this idea that each village of the country was marked to a bank branch so that each village could say that I am attached with a bank branch for all their banking requirements. So nobody could say that this village is untouched by banking, or this village does not have the facility of banking. So this service area approach again further gave lot of penetration and availability of opportunity to villagers that they are going to have a banking facility. But it remained, somewhat, I would say, on paper, because you can take a horse to a pond, but cannot make him drink. This happened so, this happened so well, this gets exemplified so well that service area approach gave every village a chance to get a banking facility, but not all came on board. They didn't come on board because banking is again a behavioral aspect. It's something like, what I can draw a parallel with Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Toilets were made, but the users were not going, because there is a behavioral part attached to it. People who are used to open area defecation, they found it very difficult to go to toilets. And it was a behavioral issue, not an economic issue, not an infrastructure issue. That was realized, and subsequently, it was taken care of by the government when many consulting firms came on board with the government that how do we address this. So I'm privy to that decision, and I know that how it was actually taken forward. Likewise, banking also had the facilities with service area, but they didn't come up. The villagers didn't open accounts. They still wanted to bank with their own, either money lender or just keep their money in their house. So they remained untouched. And subsequently, when the government started deep penetration with Jan Dhan Yojana and DBT, the triggers were DBT. That if you have an account, then your subsidies will go into your account directly. Your other subventions will go into your account directly. Your Kisan Credit Card loan waiver funds or other loan waiver funds, subventions, that will go directly into your account. Your pension will go directly into your account. Your old age pension, your other government that dole-outs that the government gives, that will go into your account. So these were the triggers that helped the people to adopt to banking. And these triggers further gets accentuated with Corona. These times when people are queued up, those who could not get this benefit out of this 1,70,000 crores, then they realize that they must have an account. And now, even now, today we face a huge queues before our banking correspondents, before our bank branches to open accounts. So this is the story that how government went deep into village areas post-independence, but not many availed of these benefits. So triggers I've discussed this, and this era, that is post-nationalization era, that remained famous for also credit squeeze, because it was a planned economy and the government rationed credit, whom to give credit, whom to give loan, whom not to give, what are the priority areas, what are the priority sectors where we can give and where we cannot give, which are the sectors like retail sectors, unheard of, 80s till early 90s, unheard of, retail loans, car loans, housing loans. It were very few loans that so the government used to give their employees their house building advance, but not through banks because credit was sanctioned or it was under squeeze. It was rationed. So sectors were not many where banks could make advance. The government decided where to put credit or advance. So this was another hallmark of this era that credit flow was restricted to very specific sectors where we could give money. This era also has 6 more nationalizations happening in 1980. 6 more banks were nationalized. So I think I have covered post-nationalization era. I would like now jump over to the post-reforms era. But before post-reforms era, there is one rather two developments during this period which I think is worth mention is the banking stability that really had to be done through Basel Committee. This was a global system. This was a global global systemic risk that the entire banking system globally was trying to address to. And this was on Basel Committee on Banking Reforms. It started with Basel 1, then it progressed as the experience grew, progressed to 2, and now Basel 3 is under operation, which started in 1988, before we started, kicked off our reforms. So this, that era, the previous era also has this Basel into operation. Right now, Basel operation has 3 pillars, which if you can look up if you want, but for just for a short mention, I can say that it talks about the minimum regulatory capital. There are 3 pillars. One pillar is minimum regulatory capital requirement on risk-weighted assets. Risk-weighted assets are based on the credit risk, the market risk, and operational risk. So there is a certain percentage that you really need to keep aside and put it in your risk capital. So this is the minimum regulatory capital requirement. The second is supervisory review process, where you try to regulate and create your own tools in your organization, regulatory tools and framework that you really need to develop internally, and you try to assess your organization on a very sound footing, in a very time-bound manner, on regular intervals, and also through third-party audits. So this is one supervisory review process. And the third one is market discipline that every bank needs to follow. That means you need to increase your disclosures. So when you, as an investor, if you really go and see a balance sheet of any bank, they have disclosed certain information which are sensitive to market price. These are sensitive to market capitalization. These are sensitive to the auditors and the analysts. So these have been very scrupulously followed, which has lot of accountability, transparency, and fairness, which are being followed under the Basel III norms. So this I thought I'll just mention it. And so now coming back on the post-reforms era, so 1991 remains another watershed as 1969 for banking system, when liberalization and globalization, privatization kicked in, when we realized that the social model that we were following was not good enough, not giving us returns that we expected. We saw China taking over us, becoming independent after us in 1949. We saw other economies like South Korea and other economies taking over us much faster, Japan. That means there was some inherent flaws somewhere that we were following up and not getting good returns. Very similar to your investment strategy. When you make a strategy, you invest somewhere, the returns are not coming, or your portfolio is not growing, then you have to change your strategy. And accordingly, the country also took a very hard look and took a conscious decision that we must open up, and we opened up to competition from foreign and private investments. Efficiency became the buzzword that whatever we do, we must be efficient. We had examples of Korea, Japan. So efficiency remained on our top of the mind during those times. And those were the times when technology also was coming up very fast. Though 91 was little early, technology took over little 2, 3, 4, 5 years later. But then yes, so we had started getting the hint. So Narasimhan committee report was very crucial for guidance of banking system when it said that banks need to be competitive and not live under the protection of the government and live a complacent life, and remove PSU tag from these banks. This was the recommendation. The second recommendation Narasimhan committee report said was that there cannot be any further nationalization. Enough is enough, and now no more nationalization. The third thing that it mentioned was about the foreign capital and foreign banks that we must welcome with open arms, give licenses, learn from them how do they bank and how do they operate, adopt the best practices that they do. And so the Reserve Bank of India came up with a policy to give licenses to foreign banks, and many foreign banks availed of this. This was also done to increase competition amongst the banks, private, foreign, as well as PSU banks. So, and the fourth very important was recommendation was private sector and PSU bank are to be treated at par. So that gave rise to a lot of opportunities to private banks to come up in a big way. The fifth one, though not the last one, was that the banking system should be profit oriented and not only what PSU banks were doing as social banking. So they have to be profit oriented, they need to be aggressive in the marketplace, and they need to diversify into merchant banking and underwriting and retail business or whatever that generates profit. So PSU banks were not nudged, but I would say almost forced to take up all these activities and jump to the marketplace in fierce competition with private sector banks and foreign sector banks. During this period only, 10 banks got 10 private banks got licenses to operate. That includes the big ICICI, SDFC, and Axis Bank, and Bank of Punjab, and there are 10 banks, the Global Trust Bank. So all these banks got the license and they started operating around 93, 94. But this was the time, probably they did a mayhem. I use the word mayhem for public sector banks because they studied the market, they studied the banking processes hitherto practiced in public sector banks, they studied the strengths and weaknesses, and they came with solutions that was so hit with the Indian masses that within no time, within 5 years, almost 20% of market share was lost. This was a mayhem, the word I used, because in 5 years, 20% market share gone by these banks. They came armed with technology. They studied well the market and the needs, how people used to stand up in the queues in trampled, environment in a public sector bank, and inefficient payment system, inefficient employees, highly unionized environment. So all those things were, taken into consideration, and to top it all, they came with technology, which PSBs in early 90s could not imagine. I repeat, they could not imagine for the terror of unions because they were opposed to taking up technology and not allowing technology to enter banking system. They were saying that the jobs will be taken away with computers. So they came with CBS, they came with technology, they came with CBS, anywhere banking. They came with ATM, anytime banking. So all these aspects which were not new to the Indian population, and they were not really, they just lapped it up. Moment they came, the Indian population lapped it up, and they moved away from the public sector bank. And by the time public sector banks responded, it was too late because adopting a technology or a process, new process, takes time. And they were huge elephants in their own rights. So they took time. They took almost 10 years. They almost took 10 years to adopt to CBS the new processes, the new technology, the new way to look at market, the new way to look at uh, the banking environment. So all these led to an exodus of market to the private sector bank. So this era, post-reforms era, has lot to do with what do you call flourishing of private sector banks. And with this background, why SDFC and ICICI are one of the largest banks today in such a short span of time? Most of the public sector banks are more than 100 years old. But if you really see the NCAP of SDFC and NCAP of even SBI or Bank of Baroda, you can very well see what exactly it means. That they came with solutions that gave them the best customers, the creamy customers, and the profitability that they were looking at. And public sector banks remain with the unprofitable, mostly, I won't say all, but yes, mostly unprofitable customers. This era, post reforms era, is also marked by ICT. ICT is information technology, computers, and telecom convergence. So this was throwing up a lot of opportunities. This was throwing a lot of technology-related services that banking was adopting, and this convergence actually led to a major shift in banking processes that moved from what do you call core accounting function to a technology function. Banking no more remained an accounting activity enterprise, but it became a technology-based technology firm, tech firm, delivering financial services. It was a major shift, and this shift was done because of this ICT convergence. I have a lot to share. With, I think, Kundan, do I have time or I can wind up with this? Even in NPCI, the role of
I,
NPCI
right.
was
So I was
formulated
on right.
as
I
the
was on
national.
mute.
Sorry.
Sorry, I have put myself on mute so that there's no echo or
Well,
something. Yeah.
so
So you have
do,
all the time, sir.
do I have 5 minutes?
Yes, yes, yes. So it's all yours. I mean, we are here to listen. It's a great learning. The kind of the history you told us about these banking sectors. It was like a complete movie going on, where we were able to visualize a lot of things. So not
Thank
only
you.
5 minutes, you can take your own time, sir. Please.
Okay, thank you. So once a banking system moved from accounting to firm to a technology firm, it threw up a lot of opportunities and possibilities. And NPCI remains one of the foremost organizations that was created because once the realization happened that now banking is no more accounting, but it's technology. So we needed the banking system needed an organization which would actually come up to the expectation of the industry. So NPCI was formed, that is National Payment Corporation of India, and as the technology progressed, so did the clearinghouse processes, where the lakhs and lakhs of checks were manually exchanged at the RBI denoted place every day, which was a very cumbersome process. So now the entire thing went on check truncation. So there no more physical traveling of checks from bank to bank. Now the checks remain wherever you deposit, but the image flows into the system. And there are three grids entire country, which is managed by NPCI. So three grids are Bangalore, Delhi, and Bombay. The entire country is covered by three grids. These grids actually appoint their own hubs. It's basically a hub and spoke model. So they have appointed their hubs bank-wise. So they all feed into the grid, and the clearing happens automatically on real-time basis at these grids, Delhi, Bombay, and Bangalore. So when you don't be surprised when you deposit a check in, say, Kolkata and to a branch in Kolkata, and you receive a call from Bangalore for a check, high volume check. So they are supposed to check high volume checks, whether the party has submitted or not. So a lot of check cloning. The technology brings in a lot of other issues. I think it's beyond the scope of this lecture, which I can take it later. The check cloning has actually given us a lot of headaches for the system. So what actually the grid does is hand over to hubs, and then they cross-check whether the high volume checks are actually issued by the issuer or not. So these issues will remain. NPCI remains uh, the the owner of this ACH, Automated Clearing House, as well as NASH, that is the National Automated Clearing House, where the repetitive payments and dividend warrants. So companies issue dividend warrants. So these dividend warrants, you remember those days, what used to happen? So that 37 rupees 81 paise check used to travel from Baroda to Patna in 12 days time, or maybe 2 months time, and by the time it could reach your home, if at all it's ever reached, it was 3 months late and the check was stale. So from those times, the match takes care of all such payments. 37 rupees 81 paise, dividend warrant of such and such company. So they don't go anywhere. They just give it to Nash. So these are the shareholders. This is the dividend payout, and they just hand over a CD or disk, whatever they have, and it's uploaded and it is into your account without any hassles. So volume of transactions has grown so much that it was impossible for an individual organization to really handle it. So this is how NPCI has come up. It manages the base 24 switch. Base 24 switch is the switch which integrates all ATMs of the country, lakhs and lakhs of ATMs now operating in the country. So it integrates all ATMs. So whenever you put your card, your bank card into any other bank ATM card, it's able to recognize your account and your balance and your identity because of this 24 switch. So this what the switch does, which is again managed by MPCI. The entire payment, real-time payment system, RTGS, NEFT, all these are managed by MPCI. So MPCI basically is a technology firm, and it's a government-owned technology firm. It's not a accounting or a banking firm. So look at the changes that has been happening, and the landscape has totally changed from a accounting firm to a technology firm, and therefore the necessary legislations were carried out during this period. IT Act 2000. IT Act 2000 labels, which actually NI Act was doing for check processing or draft processing. That part now has been taken over by IT Act because no more there is a check happening. Whenever if I want to pay to Kundan, what I do is just take up my mobile, go to my mobile banking app, and transfer money into his account. And I don't care what happens in between. But what happens is basically technology. And technology basically is your CBS, your bank CBS system, the server, NPCI server, and the other bank server where Kundan has his account. So all these technology started happening, and the entire era has been seen as a changeover from a very traditional bookkeeping. I remember having handled ledgers, 15 kg, 12 kg ledgers, one ledger weighing 12 kg. Can you imagine? While making a posting, debit, credit, somebody posted a check. I remember my first posting at Daud Nagar, somewhere in Aurangabad. There I used to make, check. The clerk used to post and I used to check. So those 15 kg, I used to be doing weightlifting more than banking because there used to be 50 such ledgers, and every ledger had a folio with checks. So every check has to be cross-checked and initialed. So I was doing more weightlifting than banking those times. So from there we have traversed a lot, and we have come to a place where now I see that we have this digital wallet. Digital wallet allows you to store value, money into your online account, which you can use for your online payments. You don't really need to take out your card. The digital wallet helps you in a manner that it's with you or everywhere. You don't really need to carry your debit or credit card, and not always share your debit card details every time. So digital wallet helps you to protect your card identity and your details and not use it. Or for that matter, P2P lending. If some of you are interested in earning in a debt, highly rated debt instruments of debt kind, that means people who are doing well at your neighborhood. You say, I have in my neighborhood, there is a barber who's doing very well for himself, and now he started his chain because his way of doing hair cutting and all those things is so well known that people are queuing up before him. And after seeing the length of the queue at his shop, saloon, he has decided to expand to other areas of the town. And people have started knowing that this fellow is so well, and the people trained under him are doing so well. So he has opened a chain of shop, and his credit rating, civil score, through civil score and others. So there are intermediaries who are able to monitor an individual enterprise at such a small level, and then you do peer-to-peer lending, 50 lakhs up. Reserve Bank has allowed up to 50 lakhs now. It was 10 lakhs before. And here, if I have a surplus money, 10 lakhs to lend, and earn 13, 14%, 15%, I would rather lend to this barber and get a guaranteed 14% return, and who promises, because money lender is always expensive, so he is happy to share 13, 14%, whatever he has. And at the same time, intermediary also makes money. So it's a great investment. So P2P lending has been taking very well in India. So, and this P2P lending is online, absolutely online. No one has to go anywhere, no documentation, nothing. There is an intermediary who takes care of the rating of the borrower, the activity, and they have their own algorithm, they have their own business models that they go through, and they make their borrowers category-wise, rating-wise, they give rating. So risk and rating, risk and trade-off, risk-return trade-off, they tell the borrower that this is what it is, and it's doing well. P2P lending is doing well in India. So there are, I can enlist large number of changes in last 10 years, particularly, or 15 years. There have been huge, I would say, leap over. I would not say just change or leap over the banking system that's happening. Even the Reserve Bank of India had put banking license on tap. That means you can go to Reserve Bank of India if you have 500 crore. You go to RBI and say that I want to open a license, and you will get it. 2016, they gave it to two banks, IDFC and Bandhan Bank, and it's on tap. So likewise, there are other banks with niche area operating, depending upon the reach, their capability, their expertise, and their focused areas. They are operating as small finance bank. They're categorized as small finance bank. The universal banks are already there, and they are payment banks. They only do transactions on payments, like Airtel Payment Bank, or for that matter, which one should I say, Paytm. So all these organizations are operating, and they have their own niche areas to operate on, and there is market for all these areas. So there is a huge potential, and it's already happening. I think I can just end up my talk with just some future crystal ball gazing, that what actually we can look forward to while I'm talking about history on banking, that very shortly we will find that blockchain and cryptocurrency gaining ground, because it's already, people have been working on it, talking about it, and thinking about it. So even though RBI is not ready right now to take it forward, but this technology is something that will gain ground over a period of time, because it has inherent strength and benefits that you cannot deny. It has certain security systems that you cannot deny. Then artificial intelligence, robotics. So when you enter a bank branch and you are greeted with a good morning, chances would be that could be a robo actually wishing you good morning and how can I help you, and what actually, and the questions that you say probably would be taken, and the queuing system would be a passive, because robo will take care of all those queuing systems. Then other than artificial intelligence would be digital platforms. This already, Corona has given us an impetus. It's a trigger that technology adoption, there is a theory. And the theory is on, there are four categories of people in the marketplace. People who are innovators, they're called innovators. They will adopt to technology immediately. Once it is out in the market, they are the first one. The people queuing up for the iPhone series, the latest one, they will stand in the queue overnight to get one. So innovators, they will lap it up the first day it is launched. And then there is a segment, which is a fairly large segment, is early adopter. Innovators have a passion to do this. Early adopters do not have a passion, but they see the innovators successfully using it and immediately adopt to it. So they are early adopters. There are late adopters. And the fourth and the last category is called laggards. The laggards actually are difficult to crack with because they have a mindset of their own. They have a mental block not to adopt. They have an inertia, and it's a purely human tendency not to change so abruptly or adopt something so new. So it's fine. I mean, it happens in all age groups. I would not say only the people oldies like me would be late adopters or laggards. No, even the youngsters are laggards in that matter. But Corona, why I stated this, that Corona has put even laggards in the line to adopt to digital banking, because it's a fear of life that has triggered them to queue up in bank to adopt digital banking. So you see that how these adoptions, technology adoptions happening at various stages. So as we move forward, I see that more of global integration happening in banking, when you will have even B-grade towns also offering you loans at LIBOR plus X rate loans. So they will offer you LIBOR or MIBOR, whatever. So more and more global integration happening. Cost of credit and return on deposit both should be going down as we move forward. And there will be an ascendancy of Indian banks in the global marketplace. So with this positive note, I would like to conclude and thank you all for having given your time and listened to me. Thank you.
We have a lot of questions pouring in also in the comment section. Would you be comfortable taking some questions if you can spend 15 more minutes with us?
Yeah, yeah. Tell me.
Okay, so I'll read the question for you. I'll bring that to screen. Uh, it will be not possible to take all the questions, but this is one important. I think this is being asked by many people in past. So she's Gauri Nageshwari. She's asking now. Government is coming up with privatization and merger. I already know that your bank has merged with other two banks, or other two banks have been merged with your bank, Bank of Baroda. So what is the logic and motive she want to understand?
Okay, okay, Gauri, I'll answer your question. You see, the naturalization, as I have already narrated, that what naturalization brought us to, and how by 91 we decided or we realized that it had delivered its mandated benefits. But there was a question on efficiency side. So when it came to efficiency, then it had to be a fierce competitive marketplace where everyone has to survive. So there are two things. One is privatization, the other is merger. The two different aspects. Privatization brings in a lot of efficiencies. It cuts down on government expenditure. And third is brings in lot of competitiveness. So this privatization brings in a lot of efficiency into the system. Why merger? Merger is the current merger you are talking about. So this has been mandated in a single committee report as well, if you see, that government banks have to be treated at par with private banks, number one. Number two, Indian banks nowhere, if we have to grow big, we have to be market player, global market player. And if we wish to be a global market player, we have to be big enough to be in the marketplace. Now, in none of the Indian banks, even SBI had just made into top 50 after merger of associate banks. That too in top 50, not in top 10 or top 20, but top 50. Only because of merger. So once this merger happens, your balance sheet size grows, you are able to take calls on large borrower accounts and large advisory accounts where you do a lot of merchant banking activities, you do a lot of consortium finance, and you do a lot of activities where balance sheet size is important. Otherwise, you're not taken seriously. So at a global marketplace, you have to be big enough to be seen. So this is one logic. The other logic is too big to fail. If you grow a size, if you grow in a size, that will become a systemic risk to fail. Then you are able to take care of yourself for small variations or small, whatever small hiccups that may happen along the line. So merger is with that motive. Third thing, why merger is because Basel III, if you remember the first pillar I spoke about, Basel III talks about minimum capital requirements, minimum regulatory capital requirement. So it spells out tier 1 capital, tier 2 capital, what should be the capital, what is the, buffer, conversion buffer it should maintain, what is the other kind of CCF account that it should maintain. So all these buffer accounts requires a lot of capital. Now, government as an owner of 28 nationalized banks had to cater to all these banks with individually with these Basel III framework, which was difficult to manage. So government said now we will manage only 6 banks. So that for 6 banks it will still be a management task. Fourth, but not the last, fourth I would say that government says that it's no business to be in business. Government should not be in business that is taken for granted world over. And it's only our legacy history that we took a socialist path and we own so many businesses as government. Now government is trying to give up its rights and ownership and let it be run as a professional organization. So it's fair enough, and I think merger will deliver what government wants to do.
Thanks for being so candid and answering that question, sir. We have another question from Jayaprakash Bhaskaran. Whether NPA assets of PSU bank or private bank can be sold to other bank or non-banking financial institution? More
Yes,
like an
we
informative
have
question.
yeah we have organizations where asset recovery fund organizations. We have in fact there is already a talk about bad bank. So that bad bank creation has not happened, which will take over the NPA assets of other PSU or private banks. But there are RCIL. One is the organization is called RCIL, Asset Reconstruction Consortium, and blah blah. What. So this RCIL kind of organization takes care of these NPA assets and they buy out. They buy out NPA assets of other banks and they work on it for recovery and then reselling or maybe for resurrecting the units, either which way it goes.
Okay. So you spoke about technology, sir, and we have Rajesh Rajesh Khanna, who is asking, how do you see the future of banks with the occurrence of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology? You already have answered about it. I would like to just add one thing here. Like even when you see the IT industry, which when it came, I mean, when we got the evolution of IT industry, 90% of the businesses was coming from the BFSI segment. So according to me also, whatever the new or the latest technology which is going to come, banking system would be first one to adopt in your own language. You said there are people who are innovators, then there are another people on the extreme side are laggards. I think banking industry has been globally, at least I can tell you. So today I got to know from you that people in fact they protested for adopting technology of the PSU bank in the early 90s. It's an information for me. Though I have heard stories about that people were afraid of losing its job against computers. But then, if we see globally, since I have worked in global banks in past, I think it's the banking system or maybe some other side of the banking, like investment banking systems, which are always innovative, have been always innovative, and really making good money because of being on innovative. But anyway, I would like to hear your opinion on this question, though you have already touch based it. But since it has been
Yeah.
asked,
As I have already said, the country is not yet ready to, try this out. There was a recent statement also from Reserve Bank of India, and it said that we are not ready for any of such things right now. So right now it is a no-no. But as I have said, the future remains with blockchain. The future remains with blockchain.
okay.
And yeah, so maybe down the line, how it plays out, that is to be seen. So I cannot give a time line or I can give any number to it, but definitely this will have, because inherent benefits are too many that it cannot be overlooked over a large period of time. So right now, it's a big no from RBI.
I'm not taking up those questions where people are simply asking about what will be the future of certain bank, whether those bank shares will give return or not, because I wanted to restrict it as a educative session where people come to know about this sector from someone as learned as you. This is what we have done in past. So I'm not taking those questions where if you're asking about certain banks and their future. But yes, banking as a whole industry, if someone is asking a question which is Praful Gupta, so what will be the future of banking industry when most of bank share price too low in comparison to the last 4 years? So as a sector, you can tell, sir, I mean, not very specific to the share prices, but
No, I have already covered this, that banking system per se remains the mirror image of the social and economic activity of
right,
the society. So,
right.
see, it's a barometer of economic position of a society. Banking stocks are like a barometer. So, if my economy is not doing well, if my growth rate is poor, or I have some demand issue, or on a supply side there are issues. There are issues on exports and imports. There are issues on the global turmoil. So all these impact the domestic market as well, domestic economy as well. And the moment domestic economy gets impacted, the first barometer that reflects is banking stocks. So, as I said, it's a mirror image of the social and economic activity. So, stocks will also be reflecting that way. But trust you me that once there is a rebound, so these banking stocks will also give you good return. And I think this is the time to actually acquire banking stocks. I have personally been doing it, that I can say.
I have been pitching the idea of not timing the market, not timing the sector, but be a consistent investor to have spare money. Be a disciplined investor. However, I respect your view, sir, where you say that this is the right time to invest into banking shares. Well, after Praful, we have Suman. I think it's a little Suman Sen Gupta. Difficult. I mean, little uncomfortable question it might be for others, but I am sure it is not uncomfortable for you because I know you personally. You would happy to answer this. What is the reason that PSU Bank in India is not up to the mark compared to private banks and global bank? I think you have already explained that early technology adoption was not there.
I'll take that. Yeah, I'll take that.
Sure,
I
sure.
take that. I think I would have been happier to know that what is the perspective in terms of up to the mark. Because if you really see the ambience today of a PSU bank, and I will not say foreign bank, because foreign banks' ambience would be little upmarket, because they are too few in numbers, and they serve to a very exclusive clientele base. So therefore, because they have very little footfall, so they can afford to have an upmarket kind of ambience. But if you really compare the private and the PSU banks in India, I do not find much of a difference now. It used to be. What Suman says, probably it was applicable in 90s and 2000. But now even PSUs have upgraded to, as far as ambience is concerned, technology is concerned, they have upgraded to a level because technology gets copied very fast, ambience gets copied very fast. Processes part definitely people are taking up since PSU people part has been again lagging. So as they move forward, their people have been recruited in large numbers in last 5 years. So as these people gear up to the front line, so if processes, Suman has meant processes part, the front line delivery part, then definitely next 5 years they will catch up on that. But as far as technology is concerned or ambience is concerned, I think private and PSU are at par as of now. At least as far as few PSU banks that I see. I have not visited all PSU banks, although, and some of them are now under merger. So probably some of the PSUs were under PCA, that is controlled by RBI. It was under prompt corrective action. So they were stopped from lending and they were stopped from doing developmental work. So that part probably might be seen. So from what angle Suman has asked this question, I do not know. But now PCA banks are getting merged into other banks, so that part also can be taken care of.
Excellent. So I'm sure people have more questions. And sir, how we address their every question is we create a blog where this
Mhm.
video will be put through, and on that blog people will comment their questions, and
Okay.
one of my team member who will get in touch with you and take the answers of those questions and reply to those users, because we have many learners and it is not possible to cover or take up everybody's questions. But we would be really grateful, sir, if you take our calls and help us answer their queries. We will write it on the blog. For learners, I know you have more questions, and I'll create the blog, email you the link, and you can ask these questions below that blog. Me and my team will get in touch with sir, take his opinion, and comment on every question which you asked. So not a single question will be unanswered. That is one promise I can tell you. Okay. On this note, I think it is a time to put this session on rest, and with a thanking note. And I think that thanking note should come from you learners apart from me. So let me know, guys, your the last comments from your side, so that I can read on your behalf to sir in a you know uh, because it was a really great session. And as I told you, There were some issues today in terms of the quality of voice and all. We will fix it for the next time. It was done in a very this thing in a hurried manner, so we will do it again. There will be more sessions which are coming on banking. It is really a wonderful session, sir. And then you explained in such a way that I was visualizing everything. It was like there is a movie going on, which I could see, with my, probably on my conscience level. It was really great. It was really great session. I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody would have learned. So everybody's saying very informative session, sir. Thank you. And I'll read out, sir, few comments for you. He's Radhe Shyam Prasad. Then we have Viswanathan Narayanan. Thanks a lot, Mr. Chandra and Kundan. Knowledge is this power supreme. Thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge. Then excellent. This is Shantanu Saha. Excellent delivery of Indian banking growth history. We could also rather understand the growth of Indian economy through years. A great talk. Thank you, Shantanu ji. Then thank you, sir, for all the information we got from you. Gauri is saying thank you, sir. History of banking is seen like a move. Right. So yeah, I also think the same way, but then I read what she has written there. Then Chitiz Arora is there, who is equally happy. Very informative session from an industry expert. Will love to be part of more session like this. 100% Chitiz. So we are going to conduct at least 9 more sessions from sir. P2P. I need to talk to him regarding P2P. I want to understand that. So there will be a session on P2P. Then corporate banking, retail banking, different part of banking, many other. I mean, even I don't know. Sir has planned it himself. He will share the next topic with me, and probably after 1 week or 2 weeks, we will have. What I'm planning is like once in a month, inviting sir and covering banking and financial services from his knowledge, from his lectures. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And I have no words, sir, for all your kindness. Really, really thanking. We all are we as a team very thankful also. All my team is also watching. We have a team of 9-10 people who are supporting these learners. So they were messaging me on WhatsApp and they learned a lot today. So thank you, sir. Any final note if you want to make, please?
No, thank you, Kundan, and thank you for this great platform that you have given me to share my ideas, of long industry experience. And I thought this could be a good idea that I can share with my learners. So thank you, Kundan. Thank you. Thanks to your team. Thanks to everyone in your team, and especially Rohit. Yeah. Thanks.
So once the lockdown is over, we will invite you here in Gurgaon itself. And next time we can probably, if it happens within a month, we can go live together from the same, place, and the whole team. So, but there is a great teacher in you, sir. I think post retirement, this is something you have to take up. I would, and look at the timing. I have created this. Stock market course, and you are retiring, and I think you are the best best person. I got a teacher today. Actually, I have been teaching alone, and it's really lonely. Now I can see that I can. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I'll end there. Email the blog and you can ask your questions there. We will get in touch with sir, take up his answers and comment back, so that we don't want to disturb him much, but probably on every Sunday or Saturday, 1 or 2 hours we will take from him and answer your questions which you are asking about the banking sector. There is no other way to analyze the stock. Behind every stock there is a business. Knowing that business is very, very important, and that's why we are having these sessions, which we call the expert sessions from industry and sector specialist. Thank you everyone for joining this. See you again next Saturday, 5 p.m. with some other sectors. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.